Bienvenidos a Travel Tribe. Today, we will be exploring a continent that has been getting more and more mention, Africa. Jack Dorsey, CEO of Twitter, recently tweeted after his trip there on his admiration for the continent and his plans to move there for 3 to 6 months at some point in the future. On our show today, we have Dom, who will be sharing his ultimate road trip journey with us. 5 months across the entire continent of Africa, from Cape Town, South Africa, to Cairo, Egypt, to give you an idea of what it is like to travel Africa, including tips and tricks to effectively seeing as much as possible, safaris, how backpacking Southeast Asia compares to backpacking Africa, countries whose beauty left an impression on him, and finally some of the dangers and things to avoid. He also has some crazy stories ranging from flipping their first car right at the beginning of their trip, encounters with wildlife including elephants, rhinos, lions, and others, and even the time they got robbed in standing traffic. To give you a little background on Dom, he lives a quite adventurous life. After graduating as a mechanical engineer in Germany, he decided the office life wasn't for him, so he decided to move down under to work in the Australian gold mines. While at the gold mines, he will spend months just working to save up money. Once finished with his contract, he plans trips around the world, including a road trip from Berlin to Iran, 5 months across Africa, and many, many others. Please enjoy this entertaining yet illuminating episode of Travel Tribe.
How's it going, boy?
Man, I'm super excited for the show. Like I said, I remember you telling me about your trip that you were going to take, and it felt like yesterday you were telling me about it, and I'm super excited to talk about it today. So let's just dive right into it, man. What was the inspiration for the trip? Where did you get this idea to go to Africa?
It all started like I've done a couple of road trips, bigger ones. I don't know. I really like doing road trips as a form of travel because you got the opportunity like to go wherever you want, more or less. And yeah, you can really experience a country like straight from where the action is actually happening. And so about 3 years ago, I met a guy called Dean. You should know him, here in Thailand, and we became friends immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were talking, and I told him about my ideas about road trips and stuff. And he told me about he wanted to cross Africa. And it kind of like it was always on my list, but for Europeans, you usually do it when you're 40, 50, or 60. And he came up with that idea, and he said like, yeah, hey, I'm still looking for people to do that. At the beginning of last year, where I was on a road trip in Patagonia, when I was like, mate, this is exactly what I really love. And I probably should use this opportunity with Africa and probably just do it right now. So I texted him and I was like, hey, are you guys still keen to do Africa, or are you still looking for a person and stuff like this? And he said like, yeah, man, just come along. Like, we're 2 at the moment. We definitely need a 3rd person. As soon as that seed was basically planted in my head, straight away, I knew like a day later or so on, like, yeah, I'm going to go to Africa by the end of the year. And man, it's been great.
So how did you guys decide on 5 months? Where did the time limit come from?
We all said, okay, it's going to be hard anyways to be together 24/7 with 3 people. I said, okay, I think 2 months is actually where we're going to start and have some conflicts and stuff. They said like, well, there's no point. We can't make Africa in 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
So they've done a little bit of research, what other people needed time-wise and stuff like this. And then they said like, yeah, well, it will definitely take 5 months. And also, so in some countries, you're really limited to like 30 days or 40 days of visa. So kind of like you can't just do a visa run and then come back. So we had a very good travel itinerary, and it came out with like, yeah, it's going to be 5 months in total. And for us, we said like, well, we're going to spend that much amount of money, and yeah, after 5 months, we should still be fine.
Speaking of money, you have a very interesting lifestyle that helps fund these trips and be able to not only fund it, but you can also take this amount of time off. Can you tell us a little bit about your work experience and how you fund your lifestyle?
I finished university about 3 years ago, but I was like, well, I'm not going into any office jobs or anything. So I'm a mechanical engineer. Now that's way too boring. So I headed over to Australia and talked a little bit to people like which kind of cool jobs they would have. And it turned out that actually the gold mines are constantly looking for people that are stupid enough to prostitute themselves, basically. And so I was like, well, that sounds about all right. Like, I should definitely do that. I went over there a couple of times, and it's absolutely great. So you basically work your ass off for 12 hours a day. You do that 7 days a week, and then a couple of weeks in a row. And then you will get some weeks off as well. And usually it's about like you work 4 weeks without a break, and then you have 2 weeks off or something. And since there's nothing to spend money on, you will save all your money, and then you can go traveling again.
I remember when you were telling me about this, I was saying like this is an ideal job opportunity for anybody who's like looking to do long distance travels, because it seems like you kind of really put yourself into working for a while. You know, you don't really have a social life. You're just grinding it out. You're working the gold mines, making a good chunk of change, and then you take a nice duration of time, and then you go on some of these amazing trips. And you know, we're not gonna get into it today because we can talk all day about your trip from Munich to Iran, and you get to go on these long travels, or you're going now to Koh Tao and doing your tech courses for diving. And it's a really interesting lifestyle, and I always tell people about that too. Let's talk some details. How much money, if somebody was looking to do a road trip throughout Africa, would you recommend to save up before you go on this trip?
We did it kind of like on a low budget, which means we had a tent. We tried to get it really as cheap done as possible, especially you can like save quite a bit on accommodation.
Mm-hmm.
But the big problem is, you gotta put down a lot of money for visas. We talk like I spent alone $500 on visas, and the big chunk is the car. Now it's not only the price that you purchase the car, which was like $8,000, but the problem is, since the African countries don't want you to dump your old car there, that's exactly what we did in the Iran road trip. You gotta put down a deposit, and the deposit, especially for Egypt, is 200% of the car's value. So we had to put down back in South Africa, where we bought the car, about like $15,000 sitting there in cash, and we would only get it back if the car would make it back.
The car had to be returned back to South Africa?
Yeah. Otherwise, we would have lost so much money.
Wow. The value of the car?
The value of the car is like 8,000, I think, and yeah, then double the value. And the problem is, it doesn't matter for them if your car is fucked, basically, or not. So you gotta ship it back. And if you are thousands of kilometers away from any port, it's your problem. You then have to take that car and bring it somehow back. The shipping was another big chunk. I actually thought it was really cheap to ship things around the world. It definitely isn't.
Yeah.
$3,500 just for the shipping.
Jeez, that's half the value.
That's exactly what we also said. We're like, well, we've got these 15 grand sitting there. So that's why we did it, the three of us. And to be honest, I think in total for us, it cost us like $7,000 each. It's kind of like, yeah, the fuel is included. It was quite a bit. We were using 5,000 liters of gasoline. Yeah, and then like, so we sold the car in the end again. And so like roughly you look at 5 to 10 grand. But Africa is expensive, to be honest. It is really expensive.
So for 5 months, you guys on average about $7,000 spent per person, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so budgeting about looks like somewhere around $1,300 to $1,400 per month, including, of course, the cost of the car and shipping it. I'm really curious about the car, like shipping it back. Like, what constitutes it getting shipped back? Like, if you just put in like the tires and like an engine and some like frame parts, you'd be like, hey, this is how we finished it, you know? Like,
Yeah, man. The shipping was actually like one of our biggest problems. There was literally one company in Egypt that would deal with private customers because everyone else is just dealing with like big customers that transport a lot. So we were actually afraid like we have to drive it back. And finally we found one company. They said 3.5. We said like, well, we don't have much of a choice. Tried to negotiate, but I think they gave us $100 off or something. So
that's crazy. I had no idea. Why did they do that again? Is that just so you're not? What's the purpose of this?
no country wants to have your trash basically in there. And I also do think that that Egypt, for example, has their own car import things. So if you bring it in, they lose money, and basically they kind of like want to try to help their own economy with like cars and stuff. So no one wants your shitty cars getting in, and yeah, the import taxes are crazy.
And just so I can get a visual, what kind of car did you guys drive?
So we did a lot of research, and we've made on the Iran road trip, we made a terrible mistake by taking the wrong brand that no one could repair. So the only thing in Africa that everyone can repair and you have a chance to get the spare parts is actually Toyota Land Cruiser. We bought the Prado. They are a little bit like the baby version of the Land Cruiser, but like parts are very similar, and great off-road capability and really tough car. So we had only a few issues with the car, but other than that, like really great.
And did you find this online before you got there, or how did you guys find the car?
So we were really lucky because my two friends are actually from South Africa, so that made everything much easier. And in South Africa, they do have a lot of off-road cars. There's a market there, and it's not so hard to find a car.
I'm assuming, did you guys give it a name? I mean, if you're doing a road trip, you might as well name the vehicle, right?
We did at the beginning, but since we crashed our first car very, very soonish, we decided it's not a great idea. We should just leave it without a name, to be honest.
You were talking a little bit about visas. So what was the visa process going through country to country in Africa? Did you have to do this prior, or could you do it at the border?
Most of the ones I could actually do on the border. Internet people usually said you should do it prior, but most of the time you just rock up, pay in cash in US dollars, and they are good with it. So I think it was only Sudan where we had to apply beforehand on an embassy. But other than that, especially with a German, or I think generally like European passport, you should be fine, at least like on the eastern side of Africa. I heard it's a bit more of a shit show in West Africa, especially also with bribes and stuff. East Africa was quite good.
And speaking of East Africa versus West Africa, when you guys were planning this trip, how did you decide which route to take and which direction to go?
Oh, that's a good question. So we had one guy, Michael. He actually knows a lot about the politics in Africa because sometimes you got war here and there, this and this and this. And for us, we just wanted to do the Cape Town to Cairo, and the quickest way and the way that a lot of people have done so, and we had a lot of experience online with it, was on the eastern side. The countries are halfway stable. There are one or two regions that you have to be a little bit careful, but generally it was really easy, and the countries are pretty large, so you don't have to deal with the border crossings all the time. Whereas in Western Africa, that's exactly what kills you, because you have, I don't know, like 15 countries within a couple of weeks, and you spend so much time on the borders and borders. That's not a lot of fun.
And I'm just going to pull up a map here of Africa, and I was wondering if you could just tell us your route that you took.
So we basically started off in South Africa and went along that's the eastern coast up, heading into Botswana. Did like a little strip, it's called the Caprivi Strip in Namibia, and then went all the way through Zambia. And we went to Zambia, through Malawi, big chunk through Tanzania, did a loop around Rwanda, Uganda, Kenya, Ethiopia, and basically through Sudan up to Egypt. So there was a little bit like of an extra loop, especially Rwanda, Uganda. But we saw a couple of pictures of them and said like, yeah, it's going to be really interesting, and like we might as well just visit these countries. But it's the classic route usually goes through Mozambique, but I think there was like some visa issues and stuff, and also I think they speak Portuguese, and so like, yeah, now let's just see something else. I have to say, like, I'm really proud of what the planning that Michael did. Like, it was absolutely beautiful.
What would you recommend? You probably guys forgot a lot about some stuff afterwards, you realized, but what were some things that you would recommend to bring on the trip as you were preparing this 5-month journey through Africa?
So one thing is that is really handy to have is a fridge. Food supply is really a big issue in Africa. So in South Africa and Namibia, not that much. You got just like back home in Europe or in North America, you got your supermarkets. They have a great selection of meat. But once you go a bit ahead of north, you basically can only stock up in the capitals. And to keep your meat and stuff fresh, at least for a couple of days, a fridge or a freezer is really highly recommended. You need recovery gear for your car because you're definitely going to be stuck at some point. A compressor is really nice because flat tires are definitely a thing you come across. But other than that, you don't actually need too much. I think it's often the lighter you go, the easier it is with a car. Mm-hmm. It was also when we crashed our first car, one of the major issues was that it was too top heavy. So we had 2 massive boxes on the top, put in heaps of stuff that was really, really heavy. And so the whole car was very unstable. I often think it's better to go on a very light approach, and it's just like, yeah, you will sort it out on the way. But I do think like a compressor, a reliable car, that's definitely a thing you don't wanna be cheap. So just spend your money on that one, and then the rest will sort out.
Money-wise, how did you guys financially prepare yourself for it? Did you guys bring credit cards or a wad of cash, or what would you say is the money situation coming into Africa? Because you're going to need some money, right?
You're definitely going to need some money. We had a couple of approaches. So you can say the southern part of Africa is very European, so you can pay with credit cards, swipe wherever you want to. Then it got interesting in some countries where my credit card wouldn't work, but then like some credit cards would work. And to be honest, that was also one of the best parts. So I owed a lot of money to the guys because they paid for the car. I loaded up some cash back in Australia, and I was coming over basically with 4 or 5 grand in cash in US dollars. And because I was a bit afraid that people would rob me, I chucked it all into my shoes. So I was walking. I was literally walking on 5 grand, just like on a 12-hour bus ride, and I was like, I just hope they don't take my lousy shoes and like take everything else, but don't take my shoes with the 5 grand in there. And dollars is definitely can always change.
How much of a baller did you feel like walking around with 5 grand in your feet? You know, you're like, dude, I got 2.5 grand in each shoe. Like, what up?
I was pretty paranoid about it, to be honest.
Yeah.
You're just looking around like, did that guy look weird at me? Or it's like, I don't know.
You know, it's funny. You probably thought you were so clever too. You're like, they probably have no idea that I have money in my shoes. And everyone's like, dude, he's definitely got money in his shoes.
That's probably so true. That's so true. I even tried to put on like clothes that didn't look like as if I was a rich person or anything at all. Like I wanted to look as close to a homeless guy as possible, so they would just say like, nah.
That's good. I actually do that trick sometimes as well whenever I'm traveling. Like if you look like a backpacker, everyone's like, all right, this guy's got no money. Like, like he's poor. Like what are you going to steal from him? His like traveler book, you know, or his little diary he writes in every night. You know, you got 5 grand in your shoes.
No one would expect that. No.
That's funny. And so you would say euros as well are accepted, or just dollars?
Dollars is the way to go.
That's right.
Also smaller notes. I brought over a lot of 100 notes, but apparently, especially if you gotta bribe cops, it's like mainly in the $1 to $5 range. And yeah, if you change money like 20 to 50s, that's probably the best idea to bring them over.
It's a little different than like Thailand. In Thailand, they want the big bills. They won't take the small ones, or they give you a bad exchange rate. That's pretty cool. So we got our whole prep in. We got your strategy in. We got the money situation in. I'm watching you take a flight from Australia to South Africa with $5,000 in your shoes, walking like you have heels on because you got wads in, and thinking that you are so sneaky and sly, but everyone's like, dude, what's going on with this guy? So dive into the story. Let's get started with some of this journey. So where does the story begin?
So for me, it began actually 2 weeks earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So, because as I said earlier, like I had to work always 4 weeks on.
Mm-hmm.
So I still had to finish my job. I had another 2 weeks to go on the mine site. I couldn't just fuck off. And so the boys decided to start 2 weeks earlier, and I would just meet them basically in Botswana. And that was pretty cool. So they brought a friend of us. So like, well, cool. So you can come for the first 2 weeks with us. And so about a week later, I got a message from Dean to finish my shift, and was like, oh, that's a pretty long voicemail and stuff like this. And he's like, yeah, Dom, we get a slight issue there and stuff like this. I'm like, okay, slight issue, I don't know. He's like, yeah, and we came off the road, and that was really, really weird. And it's like, yeah, but the car's fucked. Like, it's not going anywhere. I'm like, mate, like. I'm 1 week away of like flying over to you. I've told my bosses that I'm gonna quit. Like, I've prepared everything, and you fucked the car. Like, you guys had one job. Like, don't fuck the car. But to be honest, I'm really proud. So I was really worried the first few seconds. Then I found it actually hilarious. Like, okay, yeah, we destroyed the car before it even started. The boys did a really good job, man. Within 5 days, they sorted out another car, fully kitted it, what was left of the other car. And basically, we were back on track and just kept going. Like, yeah. I flew into Botswana, grabbed like 2-3 minibuses with my $5,000 in the shoes, and met them in the Akavanga Delta, which was then my first real African experience. It was.
What were your first impressions of Africa, and what were you thinking when you got there?
So in Botswana itself, a lot of people were actually wearing suits, so I looked completely underdressed. I was like, wow, these guys have a lot of style. And
they're all walking on 10 grand while you're walking on 5 grand, you know? Like, you judge a guy in Botswana and how high he's like raised out of his shoe.
Yeah, I think that was my first impression. And then the boys did a really good job. So we had this camp set up right on the river. And so I could hear hippos straight away. Like they have a really weird thing. They go like, ho, 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 ho. I was just like, what was that? It's like, oh, that's the hippos. And they prepared one of the coolest things straight away. So after introducing me to another couple that was coming with us for a week, and like the car and how everything goes, they booked a tour on the river. Mm-hmm. And the tour was called like Catch a Baby Croc at Night or something. And it was pretty hilarious because so we went on that river. The guide showed us some birds at night, like shining with a torch and stuff. And then he was shining around on the surface of the river, and there were so many red eyes. And then said like, oh yeah, these are the crocs. Like, whoa, we're on this little floaty boat, and they're all crocs. And then Michael eventually caught a crocodile, which was about that size, like maybe 30-40 centimeters. Pretty strong fucker, to be honest, twisting around and trying to free itself. Mm-hmm. And constantly had its mouth open. And so I was like, yeah, that's really cool. And the guy that was with us, he had a clever idea to put his finger into the mouth of the crocodile. So like, yeah, I took a picture literally a second before the crocodile just smashed his finger. It was really funny because actually it just left him like a cut in the finger, but it just like he dropped it, and then suddenly the crocodile was in the boat, and everyone's just running around like, fuck, get the croc like out of here. And man, it was really funny because obviously the next couple of days we would just take the piss out of him, like, oh yeah, what's the first thing you do when you see the open mouth of a crocodile? Yeah, put your finger in there, be clever.
And so it sounds like there's a lot of wildlife that you guys were seeing along the way. Did you guys stay in? I've never been to this part, so I'm clueless on this stuff. So if I'm totally out of it, just let me know. Are they like natural or like state parks that you're staying at, or what kind of nature preserves, or where are you guys staying at during this time?
Basically, the animals are running around literally everywhere. So if you drive on a normal road, you will eventually see a sleeping giraffe or elephants and stuff. But they do have large conservation areas, things. But I was really surprised that they actually, so you can set up your tent on a camping spot, but like the animals are running around there. So on my first night, I remember in the morning I woke up and I said, like, guys, hey, there's a footprint like 2 meters next to the tent. And they're like, oh yeah, that's a hippo. I'm like, there's a hippo like next to us, we sleep. And they're like, yeah, what you reckon? Like we're here where it lives. What you reckon what it should be? I'm like, not here. And like, I don't know what I expected. It was like, they are dangerous. And they were like, yeah, the guy from Europe like has no idea. Like they just said like, oh yeah, they shouldn't attack you if you're sleeping in a tent. I'm like, okay, cool, fair enough. Yeah, the animals are literally on every campsite that you have inside the park. The animals are running around. Hippos, elephants, everything. The one time I was really, really scared, to be honest, it was this dry grass, really looking like a savanna, chest height, and I had to go to the toilet. And so a couple of days before, they saw some lions running around there, and I was like, man, it's like I need to go to the toilet. I have to walk through this grass, and if I was a lion, I would definitely wait for the German snack to come over in this grass. And luckily, nothing happened. But yeah, scary, like really, really scary. And you hear so many noises and things at night that you don't know what it belongs to. But
sheesh. And what were like walk us through some of the animals that you saw? You mentioned rhinos, giraffes, lions. What else did you see?
Heaps of elephants, to be honest. Locals are really scared of elephants because the elephants kill the locals. If they've got kids or anything, they really charge you. They flip cars. They smash it.
Sheesh.
We've seen most of the things that you see are actually like kudus and all these kind of like wildebeest. We call it the cat food because they usually just get taken out and get eaten by some big lions or yeah.
I was kind of curious, when you were like, for example, in Botswana, do you have like a guide that is with you guys while you're out there, or are you just driving your car and at night you're just parking out and getting a tent?
So basically we did it all on our own because we had already the car, and so the two South Africans are really, really good at spotting animals. That was actually why we didn't really need a guide. Dean was really, really good. He could spot animals miles away and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But usually I would definitely recommend to get a guide. They know where it is. They have usually more cars around and they are connected with the phones and stuff. So if one car sees something, he's just gonna call his mates and everyone's rushing over. Whereas it's kind of like a little bit of hit and miss. You don't really know where the animals are. Good thing is, if you go to Africa, in my opinion, do it during the dry season, because then like it narrows down everything. So all the animals have to go to the remaining water holes, and also everything's dry, and you would not believe how hard it is to see a lion that's even like only 2 meters away of the road. It's hard to spot them. And if everything's green and bushy and stuff, you're not gonna see any animal. So definitely get a guide.
When is the dry season?
So when we were, it was just before the rainy season. So we started in, when was that? October, around September, October. That's a very good thing where you should go.
In terms of going on safaris in Africa, where would you recommend the best safaris in Africa are?
The thing is, for example, Serengeti and so on, they are really good, but they're extremely expensive. We're looking at $50 to $100 per person per day. You definitely want to go a couple of days in a row, because in case you don't see anything, like, it's not worth just going for one day. They wanted to charge us for the car $300 to enter, so we were looking at $600 per day. So like, no fucking way. The best is South Africa, in my opinion. Dean told me it is really, really cheap. Like we're looking at $5 to sleep there, $5 entrance, $5 for the sleepover. And I mean, elephants look same all over Africa, and especially the Kruger National Park is probably one of the world's most famous ones. I would definitely recommend South Africa. Cheap, nice, convenient, easy connections with the flights. The further up north you go, the more expensive it gets.
Mm-hmm.
So I would definitely start in South Africa with these safaris.
Safaris, are these also guided, or are you renting your own car, or how do these safaris look like?
So you got these two options where you either self-driving, which is not an option for most of the tourists. For us, it was. But as I said, it's hard to spot the animals. You need people that know what to look for. It took me also quite a while to actually see things, and you would not expect how hard it is to see a big ass elephant. Like, even if it's standing basically next to you, it's impossible if your eye's not used to it. And I would definitely go for the guided tour. It's worth to put down the money. I think it's pretty cheap in South Africa. Especially if you like 2-3 people, you can have a private tour. They stay as long as you want to. You can take your pictures. It's definitely worth it.
For these tours, are you staying in a tent, or they have accommodation there?
Both. You can go to lodges. In my opinion, it's really expensive for what you get for. So it's often a bit better than a tent, and you're looking at $200 a night. Mm-hmm. The 5-star ones, which are really good, you're looking at like $1,500 a night. It is insane, man. Like, I don't know why they charge it. I guess because they can, and people from Europe pay it.
Yeah.
But that's also why so we were probably the youngest people around there, to be honest.
Crazy. They're just like, hey, I'm just gonna make up a number today. How about 1,500? Like, yeah, I'm sure. Why not?
Exactly.
Yeah. But for these safaris, are you also recommending during the dry season?
Yes, 100%. Always the dry season. Otherwise, you're not gonna see anything. It was already hard to find the animals on the water holes that were left, and like, if there's massive rivers where they could go anywhere, like, you're not gonna see anything.
Well, and what are some of like the foods that you were eating when you were in Africa?
Once again, South Africa, Namibia, Botswana, that southern part, super easy. They mainly eat meat. All these camping spots have proper nice barbecue places included. You chuck in the nice steak, you eat it. It was absolutely amazing, man. The further north you go, food is one of the biggest problems. To be honest, the biggest supermarkets in, where was it? Ethiopia, for example, man, every little shop back home has a bigger variety than they had up there. It was really, really hard to get food. We got more and more skinny because, yeah, you eat like twice a day, weird stuff, a lot of carbs, and it is really hard. Like in the south, no problems at all, but as soon as you leave bigger cities, you're not finding anything. There's no restaurant, you can't stock up. It's really hard. So actually we did it again. We bought a lot of tuna. Fuck, I hate tuna. Fries and tuna, fuck it 3 times a day. That's the way to go.
What was like the weird? Did you have any like super weird food that you ate on the trip?
For us, the peak in a negative way was Ethiopia. Mm-hmm. So we were already a long time into the trip. So I don't know. At the beginning, you take it easy and so on, but like after a while, if you don't have proper food, man, it destroys your day. And we really liked the food. When we came in, we really liked it, but they eat it 3 times a day, the same thing. Uh-huh. It's breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And after 3 days, you're like, man, like fucking kill a goat or whatever you do, but like, I don't want to eat that stuff anymore. With that food, all of us got food poisoning. It's just like, it went through, like, he's got it. We had heaps of antibiotics with us. But like, yeah, every second or third day, at least one was feeling really, really shit. And man, like, we were so happy once we left Ethiopia, entering in Sudan and getting like that nice Arabic food again. Like, just chicken, man. It's only chicken, but it's chicken.
Wow, that's crazy. Like, just right next to each other, right? The countries and all of it's a huge difference, right?
Very, very big difference, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. What kind of food did you eat in Ethiopia? You said you're eating the same meal, because I went to a couple Ethiopian restaurants in Chicago and I enjoyed it. Would they have like lots of different kinds of meats and beans, or what was the cuisine in Ethiopia?
Exactly. You get kind of like a pancake. It's a bit of sour bread, and then they put like beans and lentils and stuff on it, and you eat it with a hand. As I said, it is good if you eat it for the first time or maybe for the second time, but then like 3 times a day, and you're just like, yeah, nah, like. And that was literally all they more or less had. So we ordered, I think, a chicken sandwich 2 or 3 times. One of them we had the food poisoning because they don't cook it properly. Like 3 sides of it was still pink, and we're like, yeah, nah, it's not worth it.
It's not supposed to be like this, man.
Nah, it wasn't.
Gee, that's crazy. And so you guys saying you guys are getting sick. Were there? How was like the hospital and doctor situation not existing or what?
So once again, it was Ethiopia that got me. I had a pain in my stomach, and I thought it was actually the appendix. So, but sometimes, like, yeah, you get it in that area, and like it goes away after a day. But after 2 days, I was really nervous because they usually say like, well, either you die on the third day or it's fine, kind of a thing. It was just about the time we wanted to cross into Sudan, so it was another 3-day tour basically until we were at the next hospital. So I said, like, guys, like, I really don't want to be a pussy, but like, we should check it out. So we went to a public hospital, which was one of the weirdest experiences ever.
Uh-huh.
So many people, like, it looked more like a slaughterhouse. So it was just a big hall full of people, like, lying on the floor, I don't know, half getting the babies, other ones were old, other one this. As soon as they wanted to take my blood for a blood test, I was like, nah, not here, because otherwise I'm going to have any disease. So we went to a private clinic. I paid, I think, in total $20 for all the tests and stuff. I think it was a very good one for their country. For us, it was like, it's all right. It was all right. I got the ultrasonic thing. Basically, she showed me all the organs, which was really funny. She's like, yeah, this is this organ, this. I'm like, yeah, well, I just want to know, like, am I going to die or not? And she's just like, nah, it's just close. It's like next to the appendix. Like, sweet ass, I'm going to Sudan. I don't care.
Yeah. Jeez. Wow.
So you gotta plan a little bit ahead. But I would say most of the capitals do have proper hospitals, and as soon as you put down the credit card, you get proper treatment.
I know one thing we were discussing was comparing Southeast Asia, backpacking Southeast Asia to Africa. So I know like Southeast Asia is just getting more and more like tourist friendly. I mean, you come into Bangkok or any of those Southeast Asian capitals. I mean, it's pretty friendly for tourists to get food and medical care. How does backpacking Southeast Asia compare to doing this kind of, let's say, backpacker road trip throughout Africa?
On that whole trip, we have not met too many backpackers, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got a couple of reasons. One is that most of the stuff is really expensive and young people are usually on a budget.
Mm-hmm.
And the only 2 countries we really met backpackers was Tanzania and Kenya. So there were a couple of people, a couple of Westerners that we've met, but any other country, not really. I think the problem is like, so there's no proper infrastructure. Like they don't have buses going here and there. And in Asia, it's just so easy. Like you check down $5 a day, you get your scooter, you scooter around. And Africa, it's very hard to get around. It's not really dangerous, but definitely more dangerous than Asia.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I think it's hard because you don't get around if you don't book tours. And also, in my opinion, it's a bit like this. So in Thailand, you could easily spend 3 months, for example. You get your scooter, you do a road trip. There's heaps of things to see. In most of the countries that we came through, you can go on TripAdvisor, and there will be between 3 and 10 things that you can do. And if you've seen this, you've seen the entire country. There's nothing in between. It's really funny, but like there is nothing.
Yeah.
So I think the best way, especially for that big middle part that we did, is fly in, book a tour, take the money, enjoy all these sightseeing things, and that's it. South Africa, Namibia, and Botswana, I would probably rent a car because you get fully kitted 4-wheel drive cars for about $100 a day. And if you share it like with 1 or 2 friends, man, like you will have the time of your life. But they are once again a little bit more Europeanized. Like they are not the real Africa. They are what they call Africa Light. So I do think South Africa Southeast Asia is much more easy to travel than actually Africa. And I don't know if it's going to change in the next couple of years. The Chinese are building a lot of infrastructure, a lot of roads and stuff. We'll see. But so far, there's not much to do as a backpacker.
So to summarize, the south of Africa, you would recommend getting a car with some buddies, renting it out, exploring on your own. Central Africa, you recommend getting into the country, going on a guided tour that'll show you kind of the landmarks and to see spots. What about the north part of Africa?
So northern part, we talk about mainly Egypt and Sudan. Egypt is good to do it on a rental car as well. I would never ever, to be honest, bring a car into Egypt again. First of all, the way they drive, the risk that we would destroy our car was so high in Egypt, like nowhere else before. And the thing is, so to enter the border, we had actually to pay entrance fee. So they charge you to enter the border, and we spent in 1 hour over $300 to get our car through the border. And in any other border, it wasn't a problem. We could do it ourselves. There we would have stayed days and days. You need a fixer, you need to pay him well, and then he does all the stuff for you. So I think Northern Africa, especially Egypt, can easily do it with a rental car, because that car's already in Egypt, no dramas. Sudan is, to be honest, it was my favorite country probably. Great country, great people. But it's hard once again to get there. But if you have your own car, it's absolutely amazing. You pull over around a sand dune. No one gives a flying fuck what you're doing. So we were doing bushfires. Rip out some bushes, put them on there. Fuel was 6 cents a liter. So we just started all our fires with a liter or two of gasoline. It was absolutely amazing. I would definitely recommend anyone that wants to go to Sudan do it.
So 6 cents a liter, if my math is correct, that's about 24 cents a gallon. If I'm doing my math correct, I think there's about 3.96 liters in a gallon, if my 6th grade teacher taught me correctly. That is really cheap. That's insane. So we're just going to – so speaking of cars, I know it's kind of a road trip. Were there lots – so when I did Vietnam with the motorbike, there's lots of mechanics along the way, and you could get like everything fixed for super cheap. What were you guys doing when there were any kinds of mechanical issues? Were you just all doing it by yourselves, or are there mechanics along the way?
Good question. First, try to get a car that doesn't break down too often. There are not many mechanics around. I do think if shit really hits the fan, people will help you or drive someone in from 100 kilometers away. They're really friendly and like helpful. We had some mechanical issues with the car a couple of times, and at some point it was in Kenya, so we had probably 20 or 30% power left, so we could not go around like any truck or anything. And we said, especially we were about to go to the northern part of Kenya, and there are terrorists. So we said, like, well, if the terrorists gonna get us, like, we need to get away, not with a car that doesn't drive quicker than 30 miles an hour or whatever. So we went to, where was it, Nairobi, and we found a mechanic that fixed it. So in the capitals, you will often find people that can fix it, but you need to go with your guts. We had very bad experience with a Toyota official dealership. They didn't even listen to our problem. They just wanted to charge us $200 to look at the car. And we're like, yeah, fuck off. And when we were running out of options, and we said, like, come on, let's call that one more guy in Facebook. So we called him, Lionel, really cool guy. And within 3 sentences, we knew, like, that's the guy that's gonna fix our car. And he couldn't find the problem at the beginning, so we had to stay another day. And he did it for like 2 hours, and he invited us straight to sleep over at his parents' place. While he was fixing the car, we rocked up at his dad's place. The dad was about to leave for work. He's like, here's the keys, here's your rooms, just don't destroy anything in my house, and like, we'll be fine. And we're like, whoa, what the fuck? And it was really, really cool. So you need these mechanics. I can actually recommend you one app. It's called iOverlander, and it's basically open source, and people can put in their good experiences, and that helped us a lot. So people put down, that's a good mechanic, go to them, speak to them, and stuff like this. I Overlander, highly recommend that. But yeah, in the capitals you will find mechanics. Everywhere else, hit and miss.
And this is all of Africa or certain countries?
It is all the entire world actually. They will tell you wild camping spots, which is really, really, really good, and yeah, emergency numbers and stuff.
I'm not sure if you even told us the story of you mentioned that you crashed the first car. I don't know if you really even went into detail of how this even happened.
Well, a couple of things came together. So first it was the guy that was driving that day wasn't part of our team, so I think he didn't put in any money, so he was like, yeah, I don't care.
Hello.
And I think he was inexperienced with driving off-road cars.
Mm-hmm.
The car was very top heavy, and so the roads where they were driving weren't too good. And the thing is, I think he looked down for a speaker, like to remove a speaker, literally just for a couple of seconds. Came off the road, bumpy road, and so they slowed down. All what Dean said was like they slowed down really nicely, and he was like, "Wow, our car's a beast." And but then there was this massive 1 meter ditch, and the car just went in, and they all flipped, and so that thing was completely gone. And funny thing is that Michael in the back wasn't even having his safety belt on.
Sheesh.
So he was sleeping in there, but he had a lot of cushions and stuff around him and a lot of pillows. So I don't know. Dean said they flipped, and he said Michael, are you okay? And he didn't answer. Oh my God, we killed Michael. And then he was like, Nah, I'm alright. I just had a nap. So
Wow.
yeah, pay attention with we also from there on we said okay, the driver needs to drive. You are not allowed, if you touch that fucking speaker and you crash it, you gotta pay for the car. It's your problem. Your only job is to drive. And we put down a lot of these heavy things from the top down to the bottom, which helped a lot, to be honest.
And what happened with the car after that? Did you guys get insurance money and buy a new one, or what did you guys do after that?
So first of all, they were really, really lucky because they just left an area which was extremely dangerous, and they said usually the car would be gone and everything that was in there because people just rock up taking things.
Mm-hmm.
So they just left that area, I think 20 kilometers further on or so. And you get quite a bit of money back. I do think that we got $2,000 or $3,000 still for the completely wrecked car, but they just kind of stretch it out again, but they still drive it. They don't care about it. They go oh, you can sell the engine, you can sell the transmission, I don't know.
Yeah.
And we got actually quite a bit of it, so yeah, that wasn't too bad.
And did you have to switch the deposit then for the new car, or no?
As it was the same car, actually, I think that's typical. South Africa and Germany would never work, but they just said oh yeah, our car has now a new color. Oh, that's it. So same car, just a bit newer. It was alright. They just no problems at all.
I want to touch base on what you were saying. You got into Sudan and saying how much you like Sudan. What were some of your favorite countries and why?
Whew, hard to say. There were a lot of countries. I absolutely loved Malawi because it is such an unpopular country. It's hard to get there. That's a problem. I think one-way tickets are $800, but it was cheap. People were extremely friendly, and so you got this very nice freshwater lake, Malawi, which I think is one of the biggest lakes on the planet. You can actually go diving in there. They have cool, colorful fish in there, and it was really, really nice. In the south, you have a lot of mountains, and so you can do everything. Small country, but you get the trekking, you can go diving, you can do this, and people were really friendly. And the next thing, was basically Sudan. I do think it was also because in the rest of Africa, it's really, really different than Europe. So you will always have people around. So there's one main road, and on this road, there are constantly people.
Mm-hmm.
So drastically speaking is if you want to go on a break to have a little wee, there will always be people watching you. As soon as you pull over with your cars, they all come to you and just stare at you. They don't even talk to you. They just look at you awesome. So it's really, really weird, and it got really annoying because you can't have a break without people constantly watching what you're doing. And Sudan was the first country that was not really populated. You could pull over behind a dune, maybe there's a guy with a camel coming over or whatever, but finally people just left you alone. And it was great. And they are literally the friendliest people I've ever met on the planet. They don't rip you off. They're just friendly and always help you out. We got invited by a lawyer. He said like, oh yeah, you guys want to come over for breakfast? Like, sure, we got an hour. Really, really great experience. Like,
so Sudanese people really, really friendly. That's really cool. Were there any other countries that kind of surprised you, or you didn't like wasn't as you expected?
Generally, that middle part of Africa, I thought that Africa is much more like savanna, but that middle part is actually very green and very mountainous. One of the biggest ones was Rwanda. So they had a genocide a couple of years ago, and they bounced back. They killed 1 million people in a couple of weeks, and basically you don't see anything of that anymore. Like, it's a pretty modern country. They introduced a community service, so everyone has to do a community service once a week or whatever. Really, really cool country. Another one that really disappointed me was Egypt, to be honest. So it's beautiful. The pyramids, so cool, even cooler than you would expect. And it ruined our whole experience. We did not want to talk to Egyptians. They rip you off constantly. But not in a nice way, like in a really, really mean way. And I talked to a couple of people later on about like what their experience were with the Egyptians, and it was exactly the same. So yeah, that was a bit of a negative experience, but overall, man, people were extremely friendly, and especially in rural areas where you would think that people are poor, super nice, super friendly, never tried to rob us or anything.
Yeah, I had like when I did my road trip, my motorcycle trip to Vietnam, I came up with this theory that, when I was in Hanoi in the north, when we started our motorcycle trip, it felt like everyone was trying to rip us off. And, every left, right, and center, everyone's trying to sell you something, someone's trying to rip you off, and blah, 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 blah. And it's overwhelming after a little while. But then when we hit up the countryside, because we would drive a couple 100 kilometers a day and we'd park overnight somewhere and stay in a hotel, the people are really, really friendly in the countryside. And like, we had flat tires on our bikes, and I was like, okay, this mechanic, we're in the middle of nowhere, he can charge us like $400. And we're like, yeah, sounds good. What else am I going to do? We'll like walk home back to Chicago. So I came up with this idea that I was like, it's interesting because I feel like when we put all these people into these cities, they're fighting over these limited resources. And so it's kind of like this rat race. And so when tourists come in, it's just like this rat race to get as much money and resources. But when you go out into the countryside, you have this more human connection. People are just more in tune with nature. They're not trying to become rich or whatever. They're just enjoying life. And I feel that they are more, that you can connect with them easier, and they don't see you as a dollar sign. They see you kind of more as like a human being who's just trying to enjoy their country. Now, was this the same in Egypt? Did you see that in like outside of like the capital tourist parts of Egypt, were people pretty aggressive with their sales tactics?
So I do think that it's hard to say. So the problem with Egypt is that they depend mainly on tourism. So everyone kind of works in the tourism industry. Even if they are super friendly at the beginning, they will always try to hook you up with a business and make their money out of it. So one of the few ones that was actually really friendly was a guy that had a shop for cat food. And because he couldn't sell anything to us, so he was really nice. But other than that, Egypt was really, really a bad place. In the rest of Africa, it was exactly like this. We came up with that theory that everyone that wants to make money is let's say greedy, goes to the big cities, and they often see how rich people can get, but they just can't get rich themselves, so they become criminal. Right. And that's also why, like, we saw some dodgy stuff in the cities, but out in the rural countryside, man, people were so friendly. And for me, it was funny to see that the poorer the people are, the more happy they basically were.
Oh my gosh.
They don't worry about money that much. They just they have their friends, their family. They love a lot. So you see people that basically only have their cattle and a little bit of livestock, but they're so happy. Like they just don't worry about anything else. They got their food. That's it.
Man, I was just thinking about this the other day, how like when you're in Thailand, like people aren't the richest, you have, people just, but they're always smiling, they're always just like happy. They're like, they don't need much. And it's like uplifting to see that how sometimes you get caught up in this race to make so much money and buy houses and buy cars. And then all of a sudden you have people who have like a shack somewhere on the beach and they're like super happy just to live off like $200 a month, you know, like whatever, you know, I have my community, I have my family, I eat 3 times a day and I'm like, the sun's out. I love it. You know, it's super cool to see that. I just wanted to finish touching on Egypt because I'm personally, I've been interested in going diving there. I've heard people say it's some of the most incredible diving out there in the Red Sea. But I've also heard a lot of like the dangers of the political situation, and you never know what's actually accurate in the news and what's not. So would you recommend that as a place to visit and go diving, or would you recommend going somewhere different?
So generally, I would not recommend any of my friends to go to Egypt, just because of bad experience we had. Politically stable, I do think is much safer than people actually say. They have military all over the place. We have never ever felt somehow unsafe or anything. And even if people rip you off and you argue with them, I thought like, okay, now like fists are flying. No, they're really peaceful. They still cunts, but they're peaceful. And I don't think they have as many problems as people think. Diving in the Red Sea, half. I've heard very good things about it. When we were there, it was average. They said we were there on the wrong time. Could be, could not be. Man, diving equipment is so shit. It was actually dangerous. I can't believe it. So I tried 7 different regulators until we found one that was like halfway working. Dean put in so he attached the regulator with the first stage basically to the tank, opened the tank, and the thing flew out. I was like, man, what are you doing? Like, so we had the overall impression that they would make money out of it and not service their equipment and stuff properly, which is probably not too worrying because like a lot of people bring over their own equipment. But man, I was like, it's not that cheap. So they still charge you $30, $40, $50 a dive. And then you don't even get serviced regulators. I think the tip that I can say, if you want to go diving, do a liveaboard in Egypt and find one of the most expensive companies. Also the ones that have a lot of reviews, so you will be less likely to actually kill yourself. And I've only heard good things about the liveaboard, so you will be the first one on the side. You will see the sharks and everything. I do think they will have some great diving. We went to 3 or 4 different dive schools, and it was all right.
I'll have to check that out. It's been on my bucket list since I've heard about people telling me that it's a great place. But I'll definitely bring my own dive equipment.
Definitely, you should do that.
Speaking of some of the dangers in Africa, I know we just talked about a lot of the positive things. So what about, let's see some of the challenges you had. You had a story you want to talk about not in Nairobi. You want to share this experience?
We can do that. So Nairobi is also known as Nairobi, and that's got a reason. And so we nearly got robbed in Nairobi, and we were back on the way from our mechanic, and we got stuck in a traffic jam. So there were like 4 lanes of cars next to us. I don't know, so we always locked the car, but everyone had their front windows down. So we're like, okay, it's kind of safe, so we do the exactly same thing. And then what happened, someone started knocking on the side of the car, on the passenger side, like just like this. For me, it was like, well, it's Africa, I don't know. Maybe he's drunk, he tries to sell me something, he's just happy, I don't know, like you never know what people do. But I was lucky that actually Dean grew up in South Africa, and he was like, oh, someone's knocking on your car, that's not a good sign. So what happened was that at the same time, another guy came around the driver's side and put his arm through the front window, opened the back door, and grabbed a bag that actually had a drone in there, had some cash in there and some documents. But because we had these black windows, they couldn't see that a third guy was sitting in the back. So Michael was basically holding to the bag while Dean was flicking the car into neutral, flicked up his knife. I stepped out as well with my knife, and I just heard him screaming like, fucking come at me, bro. It was really, really funny. I've never seen 2 Africans running that fast away from us. They were both knit. We were really lucky that day that they didn't have any kind of weapons or whatever. And I think, yeah, everyone else in the traffic jam just like had a really big laugh. Three built white guys running around with knives and screaming.
Sheesh, my gosh, there's like blood diamond stuff going on here. Knives
That
out.
was, yeah, man.
Sheesh. So if I understand, he reached through the driver's side, opened the back door, opened that, and was trying to steal stuff.
Exactly. And he had the bag. It was literally on the back seat. So he had the bag, and I just heard Mike was like, "Hey!" I'm like, "What the fuck is going on like this?" It was really, really fast, to be honest. I do think they just tried it. Like they just walked through and said like, "Oh yeah, cool." There's like, I mean, we had a very hilarious car with a lot of stickers and stuff on it. So
Yeah.
they clearly knew it were tourists and just give it a crack.
Wow. And was Nairobi the most dangerous place you were at during your trip?
I do think South Africa is much more dangerous, but it's only the cities and only if you don't know how to behave. So don't walk around at night. Don't go out and drink a lot or something. Taxis and stuff are so cheap, so just get that stuff, play on the safe side, then you are usually fine.
And so, speaking of danger, I know most people or some people have this perception that it's dangerous in Africa. Based on your experiences, would you argue that, or would you say it's actually a lot safer than people assume?
I think if you use common sense, it is probably much more safer than everyone would guess. That's specifically for the East Coast. I've heard stories about the Western Africa side as well.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know about that, but yeah, we definitely did not have a lot of issues.
Mm-hmm. That's good. I think that's it's a little surprising, or actually good news as well. And what about encounters with police and military? You did mention a little bit about bribery, which I used to finally in Thailand. I was like, oh, this doesn't happen, and then it happened to me, and I was like, oh, okay, that's not fun. Did you have any encounters with police or military over there?
So in Africa, you will not drive an hour without hitting basically a roadblock with the police in there. So every hour they will have a police check. Mm-hmm. And it's quite funny. So we had a lot of stickers on the car, and one was a guy flexing, and it just said something with a crown on it, and it said something like King Nicholas. So really ridiculous. And I still remember like a couple of cops. They look at the car first, and then it comes along, and then like they have a look at the stickers. And so we put down the window, and they just see us, and they're like, "Whoa, white boys!" They just can't believe it, and then. So they ask like, where? So they shake in everyone's hand. It's like, oh, so cool. Where are you from and stuff? And they go like, where are you going? And we go like, Egypt. And not a problem if you say that in Sudan. It's quite obvious. But like in South Africa, we're like, what, Egypt? And really, really cool people. Also, the military, they were super friendly. We got asked a couple of times like for money, but just don't play the game. We've heard, so they are connected between each other. If you pay one, you're gonna pay. Mm-hmm. We just always said like, oh yeah, we don't have money. Then they say dollars. You say like, oh, I'm not from the US, I don't have dollars. Mm-hmm. Or they say like, food, and we're like, oh yeah, we're also hungry. Like we didn't have anything since breakfast.
You're like, where? Where is it?
Just play dumb. It fucking works. We had to bribe 2 times, but it was because we actually not committed a crime, but like, yeah, we were driving a bit stupidly and stuff like this. So then we couldn't argue with it, and they would just put the money straight into their pocket. But it's okay, you can negotiate them down, and usually you're fine with like $20 or something. But most of the guys that ask you are actually on the borders, and they are, so when they say they are hungry and you give them a banana, they are all right.
Go through. Oh my God. That's pretty funny. So just to wrap up the discussion on danger, in which ways would you say Africa is dangerous or is not dangerous?
I do think it is dangerous in terms of traffic if you're driving yourself. Back home in Europe, we got the street lights. Uh-huh. In Africa, it's dark. Yeah. It is so hard to spot anything, animals, people, whatever. So you basically look for shoes or anything that reflects. We had a couple of really, really near misses. And people, I don't know, in some countries, where was that? That was Kenya. We were driving 400 kilometers on daylight from the coast into the inland, and of 15 head-on collisions of trucks. So because they just overtake on blind rises, corners, whatever, they just go for it, and you're like, I can't really get it. Like, if it would work at least, cool, but 15 trucks like in that single day prove you wrong. So I do think if you drive yourself, it is dangerous, to be honest. It is try to avoid driving through the night, and yeah, that's probably the biggest danger that you will come across.
And if you were going to recommend a certain amount of countries to visit based on the ones that you've been to, which ones would you recommend to go to?
Definitely the 3 southern ones, so South Africa, Namibia, and Botswana.
Okay.
That's a good chunk. So you will be doing this for probably like 2 months. Then you've seen everything there. It's really, really nice. We'll probably do Egypt and Sudan in one bit. Yeah, that's probably. And then you can do like Tanzania, Kenya, and maybe Rwanda, Uganda. Like, so they are all around the Victoria Lake.
And would you recommend this for younger people or older travelers or everyone in general?
The reason why it's mainly older people is because they got the money, and you can do it very, very cheaply, but then you won't get anything out of it. So it's hard as if you're young. You can do it if you got contact somewhere in Africa so that they can organize the car. That's probably the most important thing. And if you are willing to put down a chunk of money, but to be honest, like, so for the 10 grand that we spend per person, or 7 grand, you can live off a year in Asia, very, very good life, and not eating tuna every day. So if I was young and I would have not traveled anywhere, I would probably start something easy like Southeast Asia and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you definitely then at some point, if you're going for more adventurous stuff, go for Africa. But it needs much more preparation and
more vigilance, being aware of your situation.
That is the thing.
Yeah. And so what was your perception of like everyday life of how Africans live, and based on what we see in movies or in the media? Was it the same? Was it different?
I think you have to differentiate between the people that live in the city, because they often have exactly the same jobs as we do. Like, a lot of them are actually like programming or whatever. Then you have the cleaning people and stuff like this. But especially the farmers were very, very different. So if you would see it just like this, you would probably say they are kind of like lazy-ish, depending on, probably also on the season, because if they got to work in the field, I do think they work really hard the entire day. So they're often walking around with their machetes because they use it as tools. But I do think they also, well, it's also hot, to be honest. I mean, it's on the equator, so they will have a big break during the day, laying down, resting a little bit, doing something in the morning, doing something in the evening. And a lot of that time, I have the feeling, is really like visiting other people, doing community stuff, just hanging out with friends. And it's a bit different. Hard to say with the movies, but yeah, I think they are really generally happy people. Like, I've never seen so many people smiling, and they are extremely young. I've never seen so many kids and like teenagers running around like in Africa. It is great. Like, back home, you don't have that, and it is definitely, they have really, really young countries.
Yeah, they have one of the highest birth rates, so that's probably why you saw so many of these kids, as opposed to Asia. You know, South Korea and Japan have such low birth rates, so that's probably one of the reasons. And so, as your journey was going out through the 5 months, did your perception of Africa change?
I started noticing difference between the countries, because at the beginning, it's like in Asia here, when I started here, they were all the same to me, to be honest. Couldn't really see if someone was friendly or not. That's what I really liked. So in the end, like, you could definitely see the differences between the country, and they're like, oh, you're from there, you're from there. I do think that I got a generally pretty positive view of Africa in general now. I had no idea that was great. I fucking love it to just like go, and you don't even know anything about the countries, and you just got all these impressions. And I do think actually it turned out much better than I actually ever expected. So definitely yes. And especially, to be honest, the animals, that's for me the number one reason to visit Africa. I didn't expect that. I've seen stuff beforehand in the zoo and stuff, but if you see these animals live, man, You don't have that in the rest of the world.
Yeah. And so we had a question. Someone asked, like, if I was going to, somebody said, if I wanted to travel Africa, where should I start?
Definitely with Africa Light, so South Africa, Botswana, and Namibia.
Mm-hmm.
Easiest way, easy to get there, cheap, and they do have everything that the rest more or less has as well.
All right. Well, that's that there. So we're just going to, while we're wrapping things up here, I wanted to know, what were your top 3 moments throughout the trip? What were some moments that really kind of were like, when you think about, were like, yes, that was a great moment. That made my heart sing. I enjoyed it.
So one definitely was the crocodile bite, to be honest, like spotless. Straight the first day you see this, it's like, yeah, nah, just a guy got bitten by a crocodile. The other one was, that's probably my favorite story. So we did all this planning, and Michael had that clever plan. Okay, we're gonna be there and there and there and there. And the question was, where are we gonna spend Christmas and New Year's? Because we want to get pissed.
Yeah.
We want to have party. So there were 2 options. It was either Sudan or Ethiopia. And we were like, okay, Sudan, it's a Muslim country. We don't know if they drink, if they, I don't know. So yeah, let's go for Ethiopia. What we didn't know is that Ethiopia uses a completely different calendar. So they are actually stuck in 2012. So we went over there, and so there was no Christmas because it was, I think, like 3 or 4 weeks later.
Uh-huh.
Don't know, Christmas party, cool. So we had a little drink, and there was literally no one there. And then same was for the New Year's. We went to the mountains, met a couple of people that we met a couple of days earlier in the hostel. Everyone brought their guards because you needed a guard for the bad people. So we had an old guy with an AK with us. It was really, really cool. So we were like, first we were like, okay, how does that guy want to protect us? Like, he was probably mid-50s kind of a thing. And then he was like, he didn't speak English. So he was like, do, and that meant like, pull over there. That's my house. So he stopped, and he got his AK, and we're like, whoa, that's our man. So he was, we're still not too sure if it was a dangerous area or not, or if it was just a measurement to employ people, but he was great. And we couldn't really communicate with him because he didn't speak English, obviously. So on the whole way up there, whenever we saw an animal, we would make the sound of the animal. So like a cow, like, meh. Then we would make the sound of the gun, ratatatata. And then we would be like, and he would laugh all the time.
While we were making the intro video, I actually love that part of the video. You guys have the GoPro where he walks in with the gun, and all of you guys are like,
"The fuck is this?" No, it was really cool. So I found it so hilarious that we fucked it up basically with this not having a New Year's and nothing. So we basically did a time travel. So we went from 2019 to 2012 and then to 2020. I still think it's quite a funny story for what it is.
The second question I have for you for a Travel Tribe toss-up, what was the most dangerous thing that happened to you?
I think the elephants probably.
Mm-hmm.
So because you don't see them and they charge your car. There was this very funny situation in. It was right at the beginning. I think it was Zambia. So it was kind of like a bridge coming down, and there were a couple of guys on their bikes, like on their bicycles, 20, 30 people waiting there. And we were like, what the fuck is this? And what happened is, close to it was a pipeline, and the elephants just smashed the pipeline to drink out of that, to drink the water out of it. So these guys were all so afraid of the elephants that they would wait until a truck would basically pass by so that they could use the truck as a shield for the elephants. And we later found out that actually the elephants killed that month alone 3 or 4 people. So they just charge you. As soon as they got kids around, you definitely don't want to be close to them. And they flip cars. They go really, really crazy. A couple of times, yeah, elephants were really, really close to where we were, and we just had to floor it and fucking try like stay in lane with the car. And yeah.
Are they doing anything to contain the elephants, or are they just kind of living with just man, an elephant took out my car again. Man, that sucks. Get a new one, right?
That's basically. I do think a lot of locals try to hunt them. Now they started some kind of projects where they try to teach the locals the benefits of the elephants so that more tourists come over and stuff like this. But it's a big problem. I mean, yeah, sure, if you constantly getting threatened by an elephant that comes to your backyard to drink some water, you don't want them around. But that's also what I like about Africa. So it's just so easy, to be honest, to die there, because back home in Europe, like, you got all these safety regulations, and like everyone's like, oh, don't go there, don't go near that waterfall and stuff like this. In Africa, no one cares. It's like, well, if you die, that's your fucking problem, mate. Like, you know that they're animals, it's dangerous. Like, don't be stupid.
Jeez.
And
that's crazy. I didn't see you saying. I thought you were gonna say, like, that's so easy to get around, or so like, it's so easy to die there. I kind of felt the same way about Australia, man. It's like every bug, insect, snake, spider is out. Jellyfish is out to get you. You're like dead.
Basically, yes.
Yeah. Wow. Crazy story about the elephants. I had no idea that was a thing. We have like deer in my hometown, and like that's what you got to watch out for on the roads. But elephants, that's a whole nother ballgame. So you guys are on Facebook. I believe you guys are at We Drive Africa. So if you guys want to check out some of their adventures, I know they just posted a little trailer video of some of their adventures. Feel free to follow them on Facebook. If you have any questions, as Dom mentioned, you can go ahead and reach out to him. He'll be more than happy to help you with any questions for that. So Dom, thank you so much for being on the show. I enjoyed it. It was eye-opening for me. I haven't had a chance to visit some of these countries in Africa. Sounds like a great thing to do once this whole pandemic passes. And I thank you so much for taking the time to share your stories, your tips and tricks, and the hilarious Dom being here with us. So thank you so much, man, and enjoy your island life.
ขอบคุณครับ
ขอบคุณครับ
Well, that does it for this week's episode of Travel Tribe Podcast. Join us each Tuesday as we release new episodes with great adventures. Until then, remember, the most dangerous thing you can do in life is to play it safe. Stay adventurous.